Hey everybody, Jared here. It's a fun time to be working in the field of virtual reality. I've been working in virtual reality for a very long time, and there are so many different flavors of it. Head-mounted displays, stereoscopic, 360 degrees, and they all have their own little nuances. And today, I want to talk to you about some of the things that you're going to need to know if you're working with 360 degree panoramic spherical video. Now, what's interesting about this is there are so many cameras. And I've been in this field a long time. I've been in this field since there were no cameras. If you wanted a good panoramic image, you had to stitch it, you had to take lots of photos, or you did work with two photos and all this type of stuff. But then we started seeing some things emerge on the market. The big one that came along was the Ricoh Theta. The Ricoh Theta was one of the first very easy to use point and shoot one-touch cameras. They weren't the first, by the way. There were others that were working along the way, but they really did define the market. Now we see almost everywhere these 360 degree video cameras. And what we've learned is that resolution is everything. Whether it's the Insta 360 or the Ricoh Theta or the Views or the GoPro Max, they're all doing the same thing. They're using two hemispherical lenses that are carefully calibrated to shoot video and allow you to stitch it together and view it back. Now, what's really made this exciting is the fact that these devices do not just shoot video, but they also take telemetry data. They have accelerometers in them. They have gyroscopes in them. They know what's going on, which can do some really exciting things to the video when you're done. Now, I've recently edited a VR 360-degree video for work, and there were a lot of questions that I had because I wanted to make sure I was doing the latest and greatest. And what I found was a lot of misinformation on the internet. A lot of information that was based on last year's or the year before's. And I wanted to go through and say, hey, you don't have to worry about that. Here are some good things that you should know if you're dealing with 360 video. Now, there's some things that we need to clarify here about 360 video. Some of you are using these 360 video cameras to shoot and then post-process to regular video, which isn't a bad thing, by the way. Imagine if you've got this 360-degree video and you have basically all these points of view, and then you take that 360-degree video and you, as a cinematographer, pull out of that a really high-definition 2D video of what you want someone to see, where you're basically setting the view and animating and controlling what you want the viewer to see. And if you're looking to do that, that's great, but that's not what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to take 360 degrees in and get 360 degrees out. I want to start with VR and end with VR. And I want to be clear about this because when I go and look at the videos online, it's a real mix on who's doing what. And I want to make sure that I'm explicit about what I'm talking about. The other thing that you need to understand with 360 degree video is that you have to literally let people control the video. This is interactive media. And you're either going to say, here is my video, watch it, or not. You cannot take this hybrid approach where I will sometimes control the camera and not. You can if you're really clever, but you've got to be really careful. The thing about 360-degree video, the thing about amateur 360-degree video versus pro 360-degree video is the way that you look at the camera lens. 360-degree video is not really cinematography. When you direct it, you're not directing it the way that a movie director directs it. You're directing it the way that a theater director would direct it, that a choreographer would direct it. Because when you're in the theater, and I mean in front of an audience, when you're in the audience and there's a play in front of you or there's a dance in front of you, the person who is directing that play, they're not grabbing the head of the viewer and going like this. The person who's choreographed the dance is the same thing. You can't tell someone where to look. You can direct them where to look. And that's where it gets interesting. How do you direct the viewer is the art of 360-degree video. So it's very different than how do you direct the viewer. Where you direct the viewer in a film, you show it to them. You literally direct the camera, since that's what they're looking at, that's what they see. So we need to learn to direct the viewer, and it's a form of social engineering. One of the things that my advisor taught me in grad school was why repetition was good. Why repetition was good was somebody may not be looking. It's simple as that. So we're going to learn how to do things a little bit differently. Not in this video, mind you. That's practice and skill set. A lot of people will just drop the camera down on a tripod, set the stage, set the environment, and let people do what they're doing around it, which can work, by the way. It's the theater in the round approach, where instead of the audience being on the outside of the round, the audience is on the inside of the round. That's great if you actually do set it in the middle. We've seen a lot of people set it off to the side, and it's always, Remember, when you're shooting panoramas, I've been shooting panoramic images for a very long time, and what you learn is there's a garbage can somewhere. There's always going to be something behind you. There's always going to be something. So this idea of seeing the world at once becomes your new vision, your new view. Now, that's one way of looking at it. You lock the camera down, let the world experience it. You can guide the viewer, kind of encourage them to look on one way or the other. You can even put in some grounding elements. You can use some graphics to tell them, oh, look for the X. And then when they're at the X, you can go, all right, see, now from that perspective, it's only semi-interactive. You're kind of guiding them what to do. For my own 360 video forays, I like to make sure that I've got the camera, I look at it from two perspectives. The camera is looking at me, and I'm looking at the world. So there's really two cameras out there, one on me and one on what I'm looking at. And I make sure that as I do this, I'm constantly moving. And that constant motion, or that almost constant motion, gives the viewer the sense of direction that while they may be looking around, they know where to go back to if they want to get back on track. What they want to get back to is that particular motion. And I'm starting with all this stuff because for a lot of people who are doing 360 video, they're making a lot of mistakes. It's easy to make mistakes. I won't lie, I cheated in my last video myself. You're trying to create experiences for people, and those experiences have a level of autonomy. And the problem with autonomy is that people are idiots. I was at a restaurant where you could sort of column A and column B, and you could put any combination you want in. And after a week of being at this open, the restaurant made only fixed combinations. And I said, why? People kept making bad food. All right. So you have to make the balance. Are you going to allow them to be interactive? Are they going to allow them to take over the video? Or are you going to lock it into place? And again, the 360 degrees, if you're moving through space, your best bet is just let it run. All right. Now let's talk about some process stuff. 360 degree video is big. If you want it to be good, it's got to be big. I have some source files in this folder here. Matter of fact, I've got a variety of things here. I've got a lot of still images from various Ricoh Thetas. I even have one panoramic image that predates the Ricoh Theta. Oh my God, this panoramic image is probably over 15 years old, but it's a spherical panorama, which we'll get back to as well. I have a .360 file. Now the .360 file is from the GoPro Max. It's a great camera, but it saves this proprietary format that you have to sort of develop first. Now, the reason that you have to develop these file formats is that when you're capturing to the camera, it's basically bringing in all the sensor data, but you don't want it to do the work just yet. There's a lot of work that has to be done into it, so you have to do that into the right place. Now, the computer which I'm showing this to you on right now, I'm actually remoting into my office computer. My office computer is like a quad-core processor with 64 gigs of RAM and giant video cards, and it's still going to take a while to process this video. The good news is that's why we remote in. That's the fun part about using this sort of client. Now, this video here is 5.5 minutes, and it is 3 gigabytes. It's not bad. Let's go through and talk about what I need to do. How do I do this as quickly as possible? The first things first is what I've noticed about some of these programs, especially with the GoPro Max. The GoPro Max I've had some issues with, where if there are weird spaces or long file folder names, it does not like it. So I've literally created this Pano video folder on my C drive, and my C drive is my solid state drive. So I put it on my fastest drive. And I would recommend if you're going to process video, you work on your fastest drive. Obviously, even if just temporarily, I'm going to do it on my fastest drive. Let me come over here and launch the GoPro Max exporter software. I, by the way, set my destination to be my fastest drive. I was playing with this earlier, and I set it to a drive that didn't exist. That crashed the software. That was not a happy thing. All right, so I'm going to select files to import, and I'm going to grab the .360 file, and I'm going to open it. And what it's going to tell me is that this file is 5.6K, so it's ultra high res, at 30 frames per second, and it's 5.5 minutes long. The reality of this is just the intro to a video that I had done. I'll show you some of it in a little bit. It's not important. What is important, though, is that I need to save it in a file format. Now, when I do that, it's going to ask me for a codec, and a codec stands for compressor decompressor. It's the mathematical engine of how that data is stored, transformed, and lost. Almost all video is using lossy compression. It's almost no such thing as raw video that is completely lossless. So if I was to say I'm happy with the video, I just want to throw it on the internet, then I would go with H.264. Your standard MPEG-4 codec, throw it online and be done with it. However, this is going to be edited. So I don't want to do high compression. I'm going to do that afterwards. So I want this to be as good as possible. So I'm going to use the Cineform codec, which means it's going to take this file, and when it does what it does to it, it's going to keep it in the largest, fattest, happiest file format possible so that it can actually transform itself without throwing away data. And again, every step along the way, video data gets thrown away. It's the nature of video editing. Let's your real pro type thing. And even then, we do use these codecs. The other thing is we have some options. And the options that we have here, the first one we have is horizon level. And if I come over here and you watch it, you're going to see, I'm not walking yet, but you're going to see kind of like a little bit of a bounciness to this. But if I click on horizon level, instantly, boom, it flattens the horizon. Hallelujah, and thank God for the gyroscope in there, which can literally make sure no matter what happens, no matter how I tilt it, this thing is just gliding through space. That is important to me. The other one is world lock. World lock uses the gyroscope in a very similar way. It makes sure that the camera is always doing what it's supposed to do. Personally, I do not keep the world lock on because I was very specific with the way I was holding the camera. I was guiding that lens. So in my mind, I know where the world lock is supposed to be. So I keep the world lock off. I keep the horizon level on. These are, by the way, things where it's going to take this video and also the data in this video and create a new video. Let's hit start. And when I do that, it's going to take some time. Now, I want to remind you, this is a fast computer with a lot of RAM. It's got hardware decoding going on, and it's trickling along. Matter of fact, I played with this file once before. It'll take me about 5.5 minutes to convert this 5.5 minute file. And you're like, oh, that's not that bad. Again, high-speed computer. So, and let's say I have an hour's worth of footage. Let's say I have 4 hours worth of footage. Remember, if you're shooting something epic, you might have an epic amount of footage. And again, just to be able to have to do this can be time-consuming. Anyway, we'll let it do its thing. I'll minimize this for a moment. And we'll talk about the Insta 360 camera. Now, the Insta 360 camera gives me 2 files for every file because there's 2 video cameras. And let's come over here and take a look at what the Insta 360 does. And if I come over here and drag, it wants me to drag and drop. Fine, I will grab these 2. Oh. Fine. Make sure I'm in the right window when I do this. Fine. I will drag these 2 files into the Insta. Yes, this technically will slow down the processing of the other file, but that's fine. And the same sort of thing comes on this one here. It's autoplay. It's only 30 seconds long. If I turn off flow state stabilization, all over the place. But if I turn on flow state stabilization, it's super glide, which is wonderful. It's very funny. You can see the I think I was hand holding this, and I had the little strap in my hand. It's kind of a funny one. This is like the first clip that I played with. You'll notice that when you stitch this one, it talks about various cases, things that it can do, lock the direction, which again, I can't have it lock the direction, and in this case, I don't know what it'll do if I lock the direction. Let's come over here and see what it does in this case if I lock the direction. Locking the direction on this one may not be a bad idea, only because I was not paying attention with this very first shoot. So with locking the direction, let's see if I stay pretty much in the edge of my screen. Yeah, I think with this one, I think I'll leave lock direction on because I wasn't being purposeful. So you can see why that's going to make a difference as you move forward here. Oh, and you can see I'm wearing the face mask because, well, pandemic. All right, so now that I've done that, I can come over here and I can save my video. Let me come over here, pause this. And what you're going to see here is start export. And when I go to start the export, it's going to ask me what the resolution is, which is that ultra high 5760 by 2880. That's the 5.7K video. I'm going to leave the bit rate up as big as I can. And when it asks me for my encoding format, well, H.264? No, ProRes. We want to give us the best view possible. Again, if I was done with my video right here, right now, if it was a beginning and end, one and done, of course the H.264 would be fine. But I'm editing it, and I don't want to run into the compression artifacts of doing editing and editing and editing into the same video. Export the video, save it where it saves it, and I click OK. And this video, which is 30 seconds long, experience tells me that this software is going to take about 5 minutes. So it's kind of crazy how much time it takes to process these video files. And this is just preliminary processing. I haven't even gotten beyond that yet. All right, let's take a look at how our other one's doing. 46%. Oh my God, I was running into such issues when I was dealing with the big files. The big files were so large and they kept crashing at like 81%. And until I realized I was on the wrong hard drive in weirdly named folders and things were just unhappy. So you want to keep it simple. Keep it simple. The software that we're dealing with is fairly experimental. All right. While it's doing its thing, let's talk about a little bit about the other things that we've got here. So I've got these panoramic images. Now these panoramic images, like the panoramic video, has something in common. It's called an equirectangular image, which is an aspect ratio of 2:1, which basically means 2 wide, 1 tall. 360 degrees around, but 0 to 180 from pole to pole. And if you'll notice when I say from pole to pole, you'll see there's distortion at the bottom and distortion at the top. It's as if we took a globe and spread it out. So I've got these images. This one is in modern times, fairly low res. These are, I think, an early generation camera for the Ricos. And this is in France. This is way crooked. We'll talk about why this is way crooked. I've got the whole thing angled funny and nothing is balanced. That's at my house, but I don't own that car anymore, and I've owned that car in years. And by the way, I have less hair now, so there you go. This is in France at the I think is this the Doomsday Tapestry? I think it's the Doomsday Tapestry. Look, no, that's not the Doomsday Tapestry, but look at all the unicorns. That's awesome. This is in France. This is Monet, and this is this is the water lilies, and we'll get to see them in situ, which is really great. This is another castle. This is another castle, but what I really love about this one is the fact of where am I standing, is that I had the camera off to the side, and I actually pushed it through on a monopod, on a selfie stick. I pushed it through the arrow slit, and you just can't see the arrow slit or me. But it's really fun when we look at this because you look straight down, and you're literally looking like over space. So this is the castle wall. This is a very crooked image inside of a castle. This is a very crooked image inside of what I think is Notre Dame. I'm almost sure this is Notre Dame Cathedral, which is kind of sad now that you think about it. And let's see what else is coming up. I know there's more. Okay, here is inside of a castle, but as you can see, I have held the camera sideways because I didn't want to have any stitching errors on the ceiling, so I kind of did it sideways, and we'll talk about how I fixed that. And this is Napoleon's tomb and the Mona Lisa, and this is just a little graphic I have, and this is a high resolution image. This will give you a really good example because this is what we call a cap, and this cap covered the tripod cap. And you can see that normally if you look straight down, it'll be a little circle, but it's been warped because that's how the base and the ceiling get warped. And those are the movies that are unable to view them yet because they're not. And I think the other thing I have in here is I have a tripod cap, which is round, and then I have this grid and this grid, which we'll look at both of them in a minute. Now, not all of these are as high resolution as the other ones are, but now we've got a good idea of what it is that we're going to play with momentarily. So this one is done. Hallelujah. So I can move that out of the way. And this one is Almost done. Look at that, it's still going. While this one is still going, I want to remind you that these two files were 283 megabytes and have now blown up to 3.1 gigabytes. It's a big file. All right, and what else do we have here? Let's take a look. And this file, which to start out with was 2.59 gigabytes, well, how big is that going to end up? Well, you're going to be quite surprised. And that's the dangerous part about this, is that we are taking these highly compressed video files and we're blowing them up. We're not actually sacrificing any data, we're actually making them editable, which is very important that we keep our data editable. So you're going to want to do this to all of your files. Remember, though, that the horizon level and the world lock, those are things that can only really be done here, because only in this software can we access the gyroscopic data. Adobe Premiere Pro cannot access the gyroscopic data, so we have to manipulate it now. It's very important to think about that. In the future, that may change, but there's where we are at. And so the file, which was 2.59 gigabytes, is now 31.5 gigabytes. Pretty big. Let's make a new folder, and let's throw our source files in there since we don't need them anymore. I don't delete anything. Or at least I don't delete anything anymore. Every so often I go, I don't delete anything, and then I go back and go, wow, 20 years ago I deleted something. All right, so now that we've done this, we know what we have, we've converted our video, we've got sort of a setup of what we're trying to do. And again, today we're just doing demonstrations. I'm doing demonstrations to show you how the Adobe Premiere Pro software will work standalone. I will not need any third-party plugins. I will not need to use anything made by GoPro or anybody else. Adobe gives me everything that I need to get started right here, right now. So let's get started into Adobe Premiere. Oop, that's Acrobat. All right, let's launch Adobe Premiere Pro. There it is, Adobe Premiere Pro 2020. Excellent. Now, when we're dealing with Adobe Premiere Pro 2020, I'm a very big fan of making sure that all your eggs are in one basket. So we have all of our media currently in this C:\Pano video folder, and we're going to put our project in the Pano video folder as well. I'm going to make a new project, and I'm going to browse, and I'm going to put it on the C drive in this Pano video folder. Select it, and I'm going to call this just my 360 video demo, because that's all this is. Beautiful. I'm not here to teach you how to use Premiere. If you don't know how to use Premiere, that's a whole other thing. I did install the GoPro VR player, and it just always pops up at the most inopportune times. I never use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab everything except my source folder, because I don't need it. Everything in this folder, and not my project file. Everything in this folder, and I'm going to drop it into my media bin. There you go. And I've done it. I've dropped it into my media bin. So the first question that you're going to ask yourself is, how do I start my new sequence? Now, this is always a big challenge, because if you start doing a new sequence, there's like a million different choices in front of you. And the answer is, don't do any of them. To start your sequence, you want to ask yourself, what is the highest resolution, highest quality video that I'm going to be working with? What is my standard? That will be my standard bearer, and I will start with that. And that's going to be the GoPro. The GoPro is the best video I've got. So I'm going to take this GoPro video, this 5-minute GoPro video, right-click on it, and I'm going to say New Sequence from Clip. So it's going to generate the sequence from the clip. And that's very, very important. Another quick pause. All right, so we're in Premiere Pro. We've got a folder full of stuff. I'm going to leave those stuff there right now. We're going to start just with the GoPro Max video. Now, when we're looking at this, we're going to be looking at the equal rectilinear image, because that's what it sees, a 2:1 aspect ratio. Remember, we're going to start with this video, and because this is our highest quality video, and because we're going to stay in VR mode, we're going to end with this video as well. This is our starting point. This is our end point. However, there's two more things that we need to do before we continue. I just showed you that video, this 5-minute video, is 30 gigabytes. And as you can imagine, editing this video is going to be time consuming. If I want to do any transformations, any edits, any whatever, it's going to be painful on my computer. So what I want to do is I want to generate some proxy files. And what proxy files are is that they are lower resolution, smaller files that allow you to edit in real time, but render your proxies later time. So let me grab both of these video files, both of these video files over here, right click and say proxy, create proxies. I will let it do all of its stuff by itself. There's no reason to do it, except the destination I want to be next to the original media. I want to make sure that I know where it's going. Otherwise, it's going to leave it the last place that it was, and that's in a different place. I click OK. It's going to launch Adobe Media Encoder. After it launches Adobe Media Encoder, it'll already have the settings and the resolutions. I literally had to do nothing. It said, I've got this file. I will give you proxies. And it instantly starts to encode them even. And it just does its thing, and I let it do its thing. And it's going to take real time. So it's, in this case, another 5 minutes, another 6 minutes. But that's all right. I can handle that. I've got stuff to show you in the meantime. All right. So coming back over here, our user interface in Adobe Premiere Pro is going to change because we need to add 2 more buttons that you probably don't have already. The first button, and once you have them, by the way, you have them. The first button, if I come over here at plus, the first button I want to add is this one called, where is it? Not compare, it is. It looks like comparison view. It's called Toggle Proxies. And if I go ahead and drag it down to my menu, Toggle Proxies will allow me to turn on and turn off whether I'm looking at the proxy view or the regular view. And again, the proxy view is going to be the lower resolution file, and the regular view is going to be the higher resolution file. Just a way of being able to turn them on and off, and that's a very useful thing. We're going to render our final files. The other one is this one over here, which is called Toggle VR Display. We also want to have that one here. Both of these are kind of essential to our workflow. What the VR display does is that instead of seeing the actual source file, the 2:1 equirectilinear image, if I click it, it's going to show me a 1:1 square video player, and this video player is the VR video player. Notice it starts out at 0000, and that's, by the way, what the viewer is seeing. This is the true angle, the true nature of the video. And if I scrub this video, which won't scrub very well, if I scrub this video, it's always the point of view of the 00. That's the natural, through line of the video. If I don't touch anything, that's what you're going to see. However, it will allow me to look around. Now, this looking around, oh, look, there's me. It will allow me to look around, up, down. There's my hand. Remember, clip your fingernails, keep them clean. Look them up, down. Remember, wear a hat so we can't see your bald head. So it allows me to look up and down and all the way around. And if I do that, what you're going to start seeing is the degrees, the pan and tilt degrees, because that's going to allow me to see what it is I'm looking at. But these are not real. I can pan and tilt this all I want. When I render the video, it's looking at 00, and that's what it's going to do. So this is a great viewer, but you need to constantly remind yourself that the viewer, if they didn't do anything, the viewer is going to be seeing whatever is set to 00, which again, we'll talk about in a minute. Notice, by the way, our media proxies are doing just fine. Good. So we can do this, and we will frequently toggle back and forth between the regular, mode and then the VR mode. Now, if you'll notice, by the way, what am I looking at? Well, I'm looking at, that's the Kelvin Smith Library, Case Western Reserve University, and I'm looking at dead ahead exactly opposite me. And because it's dead ahead exactly opposite me am split at the 2 edges of the screen. That's me. Now, if this is a panoramic image, I could slide the image over, put me in the center. But that's not how video works, and you know that. If I come over here and I pick up this image and I slide it over this way, that's not what you want it to do. It's not wrapping around. That's not how video works. So if I want to reorient myself, I have to do this in several different ways. And the cool thing is the plugins are already here. The plugins, the video effects that I'm looking for, are located. And you notice I have the GoPro VR effects because I downloaded them as myself. We don't need them though. I can come over here to Immersive Video. And under Immersive Video, I can look up over here where it says VR Rotate Sphere. And if I come over here, and yes, I'm still using the non-proxy file, but that's fine. If I drag this onto VR Rotate Sphere, what you're going to notice is that now I have new items. And that is tilt, pan, and roll. And of course, we all know about I don't remember what they call it, but I always call it the Adobe finger. When you put your cursor over a number and then you click and drag, I always called that the Adobe finger. I don't know what I was like, give them the Adobe finger. But that means that if I were to come over here and tilt my video, or roll my video, Now, this is not to reorient the video. And by reorient the video, remember, my video is already horizontal on the horizon line. If my video wasn't horizontal on the horizon line, this is not the tool I would want to use for that. This tool is literally allowing you to pan the camera. This is about you rotating the camera, not resetting the world. There's a difference. Matter of fact, I will jump to that difference momentarily. But instead, I'm going to pan all the way into the center, and now look, Jared's in the center. That's great. And now if I come over to my VR mode, you're going to find me in the center, and look, I'm at 0, 0. I have moved the camera over this way, and the camera is set that way. And of course, I could now come over here and do it this way, and if I was very clever and I was very good, for the most part, I'm going to be pretty much where I need to be, because I am, until I'm not. But no, if you look, pretty much most of the video, I was really good staring at the camera, so there's a camera at me and a camera not at camera at me and a camera not at me. Because that's the other thing you've got to remember is, where's your seam? There's always a seam. These cameras do have what's called a parallax error up to a certain amount of distance. So you can only go down to, let's say, 18 inches. Well, unless I'm less than 18 inches away, I want to make sure that I'm not putting the seam on my face. Otherwise, there'll be more of an error on my face. I want the seam to be facing where I know I'm going to get at least the 18 inches before I hit error phase. And I've continued to speak long enough that I now have proxies. And because I have proxies, I can do this. And now that I've done this, it should spin a little bit easier. Now, that being said, you may see some errors in the proxies. You may see like a little black line or a little black dot. And if you do, that's okay. The proxies are never exactly the same. It's just good enough, to get the work done. All right, let's go back to 0 and 0. Now, what I meant by this before, let me come over here and grab one of the other images that I have. What image was I had that was really crooked? Oh, yes. R0010001. File naming conventions at its finest. Let me put this on the timeline. And let's make it really long. All right, good. Now, the first things first, you're going to see something really weird here in a second. What the hell is that? Why is there a piece of black in this? What is going on? Well, it's kind of funny when I show you what's going on. What's going on is the picture isn't big enough. See, I set my resolution to my best quality image, the highest resolution image, but this isn't nowhere near, well, it's close to it, but it's not the right one. It does have a 2:1 aspect ratio, so it is correct. It's just not sized properly. Luckily, there's a really cool feature. I'm not going to go in. Do not go into here and try to scale it. You don't need to do that. It's much easier than that. All you do is right-click and say Scale to Frame Size. Perfect. Now that it's perfect, I can come over here, and I shouldn't see. Well, that's actually there. That's a column. I shouldn't see any problems. Now, the problem I'm running into, of course, is that this is terribly uneven. So it's like I'm spinning around in the wrong direction. And if I were to grab the VR Rotate Sphere and recenter it, that really rotates the camera. It does not solve my problem. It doesn't solve my reorienting the horizon problem. So to reorient the horizon, I need to come back over here. First of all, get out of VR mode, so we can really see that the horizon isn't horizontal. And instead, I'm going to come over to the VR projection. And VR projection, which by the way is going to have the same controls, but it means something different. So let's come over here and see if I can. Now the fun part is can I manually control what these things are? So do I need to pan? I don't need to pan. Well, panning may not hurt, but let's start to roll. See, somewhere between these three is a horizon. And you're like, how do you find it? And the answer is carefully. Just carefully. Now, interestingly enough, the thumb gets warped because, remember, I was holding the camera crooked, and so the image is wrong, but it's still there. All right, so let's keep doing this. Let's get this done. Now, I have other software packages, panoramic image software packages that can do this for me. And as again, the video won't need this because we've already done it. But that's pretty close. It's always funny. I talk nonstop. When I get quiet, you should get nervous. Now, look at that. When I pan, it literally pans. Right? I'm normal now. And what that means is if I go into VR mode and I start panning in a circle, it feels completely normal. And if I look straight down, what you'll notice is I'm not really looking down. My spot isn't my spot. It actually, the spot where my camera was isn't actually on the bottom anymore. But this is the most accurate way of doing it, right? This is an accurate way of looking around. I have leveled my image manually, and now that I've done this, now I could go and grab the VR rotate sphere if I wanted to orient things differently. And let's do that again real fast. Let's grab the not VR projection, but let's grab VR rotate sphere. And now with VR rotate sphere, I can decide that I want to pan around, and I've got this control where this is based on that. So the VR rotate sphere is really about what the camera sees, and the VR projection is really about what the world is. Very different things here. Both of these are plugins built into Adobe Premiere Pro. Thank you, Adobe Premiere Pro. All right, excellent. That makes me happy. So I've got, and again, I don't need to do that with this one because the horizon lock is already there. So for the most part, there's very little I would want to do with this. Now, what's interesting about this video is that for the first few minutes, for the first minute, I'm speaking to the camera. I'm going, hey, everybody, welcome to my tour. And then I'm like, hey, everybody, stop looking at me. Well, I don't want them to necessarily let go of the camera. So what I end up doing is I end up putting a cut in and then reorienting the camera facing away from me. And I do this so that people know which way is forward as they go forward. They can look at me anytime they want. I'm not the focus. I'm not the most important part of the show. It's there anyway. But when I do that, I want to be thinking strategically about how I'm treating the viewer. And when I do that, the way that I do it is I use a dip to black. I actually go through and I actually go dip to black and re-up because I want them to know something has happened here. And you can let them know something has happened here visually, or you can stop everything. I could put in a pause and ask them to orient. This is really important. How you guide the viewer, because if you're not guiding the viewer, then shut up, let them experience the world. But that's the problem with 360 video, is unless you are really, really good at your job, if the murder is happening in front of them and they look behind them, they're going to miss the movie. That's the problem with 360 video. It's a different type of experience. So you have to ask yourself, how do you get somebody? And again, I highly recommend you go to see some theater, because play directors, this is what they do. They learn how to get people to look where they want them to look without grabbing their heads. That's why the theater is amazing, and that's why people hate theater, because it makes them work, right? They want to sit back and relax and literally be guided through it. It's a rail, it's a roller coaster. That's what a video is. And this is not. This is much more open-ended. So you've got to make it all interesting, and that's the other part. You're only thinking about this much of the world as being interesting. Now you've got to make it all interesting, and that's a whole different beast as well. All right, we're doing good so far. I'm kind of happy with the way this is going. So I've got the video. Don't worry about the audio. See that black line? That's because I'm using a proxy, right? Turn the proxy off. Everything looks better, but don't worry. I like the proxy video. So, I'm waiting for it to begin. I love the fact that I can just watch the audio, right? Watch my mouth go. There we go. So that's my starting point. All right, delete. All right, good. So I walk for a minute, la 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 la, and then in a moment I'm going to put my mask on. Now, obviously, when I put my mask on, the camera dips down. Like literally, I dip over there. That's me putting my mask on. This is not part of the video I want people to see. I thought about, by the way, I actually thought maybe it would be clever, but then I realized that I would have to get people to look down, and that really isn't what I wanted them to do. So I'm going to stop when I stop speaking. Thank God for. All right, so right around, I've got to put my mask on. I'm going to slice again. And then, after my mask is on, and I come back over here. By the way, in the real video, I overdubbed all the audio up to this point because why bother? But let's say for a moment that I don't want this jump cut here, which is not bad, by the way. It's not the horrible jump cut. But let's say at this point, I want to start changing the tour direction. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go to my video transitions. And yeah, there's immersive video transitions, but I really don't need any of them. I'm just going to go back to my standard dissolve. I'm going to do a dip to black. And I'm going to come over to this clip, and I'm going to rotate it back to 0. So even though it's the same video, it's going to make sense to the viewer that I'm now back there. So if I watch it, la la la, I put on my mask, and now I'm facing forward, and now I'm walking forward. So this is the design of motion, of space. And that's the thing you want to be thinking about, is where is the space? Now think about the other way around. If you had used a tripod, I'd use a tripod, and everything was around it, and then I started moving the camera, now I'm just fighting with them. They're panning this way, I'm panning this way. That's no good. That's just rude. All right. So I've got this, and I'm going to stop right around here because that's all I need from this video, just to show you that. And because I'm happy with this panoramic image here, I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to keep going forward. Now, I've got some other panoramic images here. I want to show you a couple other little things here that are cool. Let's start off with this grid here, right? Oops. Let's come back over here, not be in panoramic mode. Let's launch this grid. Now, this grid, here it is. Nice long grid. This grid is way too small. So right click and scale to frame size. Bam. It's a beautiful grid. But what does that look like inside of virtual reality? What happens when you map it that way? And it looks like you're in a cylinder. And then, of course, you realize, oh no, I'm in a sphere. And that's exactly what happens. This is the level of distortion that you're looking at when you're playing with these things. And again, I know most of you don't think about the video or the stills this way, but if you were like I was back in the day and you were having to hand stitch everything and really start getting a think about space, we used to do the panoramic stuff before it was even two spherical images. We would do it with lots of spaces, the regular two-dimensional regular cameras. Then you start trying to think about how you're trying to map it. There's other ways of mapping it as well. Mapping it to a sphere, mapping it to a cube, all sorts of fun stuff. All right, let's come back over here, and we've grabbed our 001. Let's grab some of our other still images and see if we can give ourselves, because again, using the still images is very useful because it allows us to get a sense of what's going on. The only bad news with the still images is that my still images are from an older, first generation camera, which means it's going to be a little bit lower resolution, which is fine, except you don't want to put them in a head-mounted display. And that's the other part of looking at these things, is a lot of you are doing this because you want to put them on a head-mounted display and realize that there is a limitation to where things will hold up in terms of resolution and grain and things like that. And the answer to your question is just get good stuff. All right. Let's take a look at this one image first, though, because this is the oldest image that I brought you today, and this image here doesn't work because low res. Let's come over here and make it high res. Scale to frame size. And this is at Case Western Reserve University. You should do whole virtual tours. These were done with fisheye lenses and really fancy tripod heads. And again, none of it's needed anymore. If I come over here, what you can see is you can see the classroom. You can go up and look at the ceiling. And look, again, no real artifacting here. I'm really good at this stuff. I was, at least. Now it's really easy. And then if you look, there's the tripod cap. And it says the P.W. Lewis building. And it's from 2002. So I was shooting panoramas. I was shooting perfect panoramas 18 years ago. I'm kind of proud of that. Low res, but there you go. That's what we had. And again, nothing to be done with this because it had already been leveled. It had already been capped. But it gives you an idea of what's going on. Let's take a look at what else we have. All right. So let's come back over here. Let's do all of these real fast. Let's make sure that all of these are scale to frame size, just so that we can get an idea of what's going on. Scale to frame size. And again, it shows you that we're really not that far behind in terms of quality. We're up to 5.7K. These are probably 4K files, so it's not that bad. Really, what gets bad is the noise profiles. The noise profiles, these seem to be really grainy. But remember, I'm doing these indoors without a tripod, and again, these are ones that didn't even have the gyroscopes to auto level them. So that becomes another trick for this as well. And again, thank God for the auto leveling. Thank God for the fact that you can do all of this. That's an early one, right? See how low res that is? But again, you're going to go with your whatever your highest common denominator for this one is. You want to make sure that you want to start with the best and then scale to the worst. Scale from the worst. All right. And you're like, are you really showing us all these images? Yes, because they all offer something different to look at. All right, so this one over here, let's take a look at it inside of the viewer, the panoramic viewer. And again, I'm on a hillside, so it's hard to see where the horizon is. But it looks pretty good. I can deal with that one. I don't got to do anything special with that one. All right, that's good. Let's take a look at this one. Ooh, this one is crooked. Right? No matter what happens, it's crooked. So remember, if it's crooked, what do you do if it's crooked? You level it. But you level it with, and that rotate sphere, you level it with VR projection. So with VR projection, it's never pan, by the way. It's always a combination of tilt and roll. There we go. And my stupid bald head. The pan is just nice for you to be able to see where things are. So you can kind of see that I could. I want to get things nice and cigar bandy. There's an even way of doing this. All right, that looks, it was close enough. And if I come back over here, now I feel I'm a little square in the room. But there's my hand. So let's talk about my hand. Let's wait. Let's keep going. We'll talk about my hand in a second. 0, 0. Oh, this one's great. But is it great? And the answer is a little off again. Again, that's why you can see a little bit of bowing there. A little bit of bowing. VR projection. Come down and ask myself, am I rolling or am I tilting? And again, I can always pan to kind of fix it a little bit. Not to fix it, but to get a better view. All right, that's close. This is amazing. This one is one of my favorite images. I wish it wasn't so grainy, but look at that ceiling. Look at that ceiling. Lets the natural light in. It's an oval. I always tell people when I first saw this, when I first stood here, my heart skipped a beat. Like I really understood this immersive room. And then I knew I wanted to shoot it. And then of course, all I got to do was deal with people in the room. All right. So let's take a look straight down. My hand. Blah. Fine. So let's come over here and add something to this. Let's come over here and grab my cap. There's my cap. I'm going to throw it in here. There's my cap. Now, when I added my cap, let's actually look at it in the non-VR mode for a moment. When I added my cap, it was like, there it is. There's a circle. Are you happy with it? Now, I want the cap all the way down. Now, what's cool about this is now I'm going to use something called VR plane to sphere. And VR plane to sphere is where I'm going to take this image, which is sitting in the video, and put it in the sphere. There are multiple ways of doing this, by the way, but this is the way I like to do it. VR plane to sphere. If I do VR plane to sphere, what it's going to allow me, now it just pops it up big, and it's going to allow me to look at it in one of two different ways. And you're going to see, when I do that, it's going to say rotate source or rotate projection. Now, this idea of the difference between the source and the projection is a lot like we talked about before. The projection is what we see. The source is what it is. Now, in this case, what it is a circle that's flat, which is what I want it to be. So I want to actually do what we see. And what I want to do is I would like to bring this down. I don't even bring it down. Well, like a look where it is. Right now I'm looking at it. It's right in front of me. If this was on the sphere, I would want to rotate it down so it'd be straight down. And that would not be rotating, that would be tilting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to tilt it downward. And you can see it's going to just slide it down. Or I can slide it up. Does that make sense? That's cool. But let's look at it non-VR and you'll understand really where I'm going with it. Sliding it down and watching it distort. And if we watch it all the way distort and we get it down, now if we go too far, it'll come back out again, upside down. But the answer is 90 degrees. And that's that blob there. And now, if I go to look at this, if I go to look straight down, I've got my tripod cap. Now, if it's too big, I can always change the scale to wherever I want it to be. And there's a feather. I can feather it more, feather it less. Obviously, I don't want to feather it less because I would lose my image there because I've already made it a circle. But there you go. That is my tripod cap. And it's going to be great. And it's going to be right at the bottom. And what the hell? It's going to be probably good enough for me to put on almost everything. Why do I say that? Because at the end of the day, it's where it's located in space is at the bottom of my image. And that means that no matter what I'm looking at, image-wise, that should be right there over what I'm touching. Oops. Over what I'm touching. Now, in this case, we realize that my finger got slid around, and that's because of what I had done differently there. But we'll get back to that in a moment. But that's the idea of using a tripod cap. And what we've done there is, again, we've used VR plane to sphere, where I've taken my circle, left it what it is, and then slid it into position. And again, you'll notice that, let me go back to 0, 0. And you'll notice it works with this one, it works with this one, it works with this one. This one's a little bit crooked, but again, even if it wasn't crooked, it works with this one. There's my hat. Look at that ceiling. Oh, I love these ceilings. Sorry, I really do love panoramic imagery. So I've been doing this for so long. Now this one here, this one's great, right? I got no problem with this one. Though the funny part is I put a tripod cap where I don't need one, right? If I were to turn off this layer, ooh, look at that, straight down. Because the seam in this one is actually right there on the, coming out the arrow slit, but you can't see it. And again, I've already reoriented this one. What if I hadn't reoriented it? Let's take a look at one that I haven't reoriented. This one I haven't reoriented, right? This one is a huge problem, right? That's not how the world's supposed to look. So how do I make the world look proper? Well, we know that. I come over here to VR projection. And this one is going to be a whole, not a roll, it's going to be a whole lot of grief to get this one to come back up. So I've got this one, and so now, look at that. Now roll is like tilt, and pan is like, oh, come on, you can do this. Somewhere here is the right number. Or do I have to go all the way the other direction? Somewhere here is the right number. So that's just panning back and forth. Okay, let's do it by the numbers. Let's see if I can get this done. Alright, so I need to get this one towards the center. Alright, now it's upside down. Now it's... Oh, there. I was getting close. So you can see, by the way, how I shot it now, right? Ah, now you can see how I can get it nice and level. And now the pan works just fine. It's such a fun thing to do. Now, let's take a look at what this image really looks like. And there's me, and I can pan around like a normal human being. By the way, there's no spot on the floor because I shot over the floor. I can see the ceiling perfectly, which is what I wanted to. No seam on the ceiling. And there's the room. And then, of course, there's me pointing outward and, of course, looking at my phone. Always looking at my phone. That's a pretty good one. Don't need the tripod cap for this one either. It'd be on the wall. You know what? This makes a really good point. What would we put here instead? Well, I'm so glad you asked. So I have another graphic. And this graphic is more of a sign. That's why I've called it sign. And if I put the sign in the graphic, it's going to put it up right there. Little rectangular box in the image. And if I start panning, you're going to see that it kind of rotates with it. Nothing spectacular here. And if you look at it, it's just a regular rectangle stuck in the image. But like I did before, I can come over here and do VR plane to sphere, and I can look at this a little bit differently. Now, wait a second. Why did it bulge like that? Well, with it bulged like that, if I come over here, it's completely flat. I'm pre-warping my images, which is, by the way, what a lot of VR headsets do to combat some of the things the lenses do and don't do. And so in this case, let me scale it down a little bit so you can, which basically will push it into space. And now, if I go to rotate projection, which is what we did before, if I go to tilt it, it'll slide it up and slide it down. That's nothing that exciting. If I go to roll it, it just rotates it in space. And if I go to pan it, well, that's just going to pan it around. So that's an easier way to look at it, but we already knew that one. So what does the rotate source do? Well, the rotate source says what would happen if I transform the source before I put it into the space. So the tilt would basically tilt it forward or backwards. The pan would basically tilt it. So now we can really orient this in three-dimensional space. And again, when I'm done with it, wherever I'm done with it, that's where, when I go to view it, you're going to see as I move it, it's going to kind of move along with it that way. And that's what we're looking at with this type of thing for including other types of graphics, which is really useful. Napoleon's tomb, I shot at an angle. Damn me. Why did I shoot at an angle? Because I wanted to see down. But I should have done it a little bit upwards, which means I go back to VR projection. Because again, if I'm fixing the projection, I want to go to VR projection, and I want to fix not my roll. My roll was fine, damn it. It was my tilt, because I tilted the camera. And if I come back over here, I can get it level. And if I can get it level, then it should be easier to view around in a circle. And then I can look down. Now, if I wanted the video to start looking down, that's when I would go to VR Rotate Sphere and aim my camera down that way, which is exactly what I'll do. So with this one here, now that I've made my panorama accurate, it's level, I will go over to VR Rotate Sphere, put this one over here, and then I will come over here and I will tilt downward and pan a little bit over, so that as I start to talk about Napoleon's tomb in my voiceover, this is where I begin, and then people can choose to leave and go off on their own direction if they want to. The Mona Lisa. Now, luckily, I think the Mona Lisa is level. Yeah, this image, it's mostly level. But let's come over here and double check it again. Go to VR projection. And again, this is more of a tilt, because I probably was tilting downward a little bit. And then, of course, I want to pan so that the Mona Lisa is right in the center, though I can do that afterwards. And I probably don't have to do anything else other than that, except now that I'm at 0, 0, I want to come over to VR Rotate Sphere. And then I want to pan until the Mona Lisa is dead center. And there you go. So the Mona Lisa is dead center. There's my hat. Now you know why I wear a hat. Obviously, I'm almost sure I'm using a monopod here, a selfie stick type thing, and then controlling it with the camera makes my life a little bit easier to be above the crowd. And then, of course, I love the part you can just go look up and see a beautiful grid. And then lastly, we have this image, which I've already looked at before. So congratulations. I've shown you really everything that I wanted to show. Oh, there's one more thing. But in terms of the editing of this is it. You know, this is all I really wanted to show you. It's sort of the understanding of how this stuff works. And again, I want to point out, it's the understanding of how this stuff works that makes the biggest difference here. Oops. Let me unlink the audio and the video. And I'm doing that because I don't want to render the audio for this file. I'll explain why in a little bit, but there you go. So I have, is this really 8 minutes long? That's ridiculous. I don't need this to be 8 minutes long. All right, I think I was a little silly with the grid. Here we go. Let's go over here and just see if this is a little bit more reasonable. All right. So yes, now I've got a 3-minute long file, and most of it's still images that don't do anything. But that's okay. Why is it okay? Because you're going to do something when you go to view them. All right, last step. It's time for me to make this VR in VR. I want YouTube to be able to understand it's a VR file. So, File, Export, Media. Now, normally we go to some preset. That's our MO, right? Normally what we do is we figure out some preset of what we're trying to do and let it do its thing. And the answer is not today. Our preset is our sequence. H264, because we're exporting it. Match source, high bit rate. In other words, give me a good file. The trick is under the video tab, effects, video, audio, multiplexer. Under the video tab, you scroll all the way down to where it says video is VR and hit the check mark. It knows it's already checked because it did know this was VR video. If you upload to YouTube an equirectilinear image, rectangular image, a 2:1 aspect ratio image, it will not know it's virtual reality. Matter of fact, one of the biggest problems people have is they get one of these cameras, they decode the video, they make an MPEG-4, they upload it, and it doesn't know that it's a VR video. There's actually a bit somewhere in the metadata that you have to change, and there's actually all these little utilities that you can do with it, but you don't have to because Adobe Premiere Pro does it for you. Also, by the way, it is monoscopic, not stereoscopic, and it is 360 by 180. 360 around, 180 up and down. And if I were to do that, and I were to call it this thing, and hit save, it will export as this high resolution file. Now there's one last little thing I got to tell you. YouTube takes its time when it does this. It's going to take 6 minutes to process. Don't worry about that. What YouTube's going to do is you're going to upload the file, you're going to put in all the metadata, you're going to go, hey, this is my 360 video. And then it's going to go SD first, HD later, which is what YouTube always does. And then you're going to get a message saying that it's done processing and you can view it. And then you view it and it's a regular 2D video file that you can't touch. Yeah, that's what happens. It's not done processing. It's done processing stage 1. But it's got to do like all this other processing, and it could take several hours before it's ready. But when it's ready, and then you're good to go. So, I am not going to publish this video. It's going to be a really sucky video. I mean, it's good enough to play. You can pause and spin around, and there's no audio because I don't want you to hear me being silly. But what I will do is since I'm putting this video on YouTube, I will include in the description a link to the video that is panoramic for you to look and see what I've done, so you can kind of get an image of what's going on over here. And that's it. My name is Jared Bendis, and I hope you find this useful. I want you to think very carefully about what it is that you're building. I always want you to do that. I think media theory is as important as clicking. You know, what to click, when to click, why to click. Enjoy what you're doing. Post in the comments if they're nice. If you're like, you don't know what you're doing, there's another way of doing it. Of course there's another way of doing it. There's always another way of doing it. This is my way of doing it. This is useful information that I hope is useful to you. If it's not useful to you, sorry. Go on and make another video. But I hope this is useful to you. There are other videos. Look at my channel. Like, subscribe, follow, share, ring that bell, all type of good stuff. Check me out on Instagram, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, Etsy, Patreon, whatever. Just, follow me online. My name's Jared Bendis. I hope this was useful for you. And it's going up. And in 7 to 10 minutes, I will post this to YouTube, and we'll go from there. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. Let's do this again.